Maybe we are.
Oh,
Now we are.
now we are. All right.
Hey, Daryl.
Hey, what's happening?
Not much. I'm Lori Sapinski with Star Garden.
Daryl Ross with Star Garden and 40 Acres.
Yeah. So we are just we're going live today just to kind of respond to a lot of questions that we've had at Star Garden from entrepreneurs who are looking at the second round of PPP loans. And we kind of started out last week on the juice. We had a panel that was more kind of focused on why it's important to keep good books and for tax reasons and just in general as an entrepreneur. But some of the questions morphed into some of the PPP loan applications and then forgiveness information. And so we thought maybe we would just go live today, answer a few questions that have come in as a result of that, and then maybe collect some questions if we are not able to answer them right now. Daryl's been through the process successfully, and so there might be a lot of stuff that he can lend his advice to or kind of his thoughts on. So that's
I like to think of it as we're accidental almost experts. So as you guys know, at Star Garden, a lot of us are also entrepreneurs. So we've been through a lot of the COVID programs, both on both sides of it. Serving entrepreneurs and actually as entrepreneurs. So decided to see if there were some questions out there in the ecosystem or that we can kind of facilitate answers to or answer ourselves. Maybe,
right.
possibly.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So for anybody that's watching, please type your questions in the on Facebook and we'll get them. We'll get them out and we'll try to go through them. And if we don't know the answers, we will collect those questions and then we will get back to you and refer you to the right place to get advice. So we'll just kind of start through, I guess, we did get a few questions ahead of time. So maybe we could just filter through those, Daryl, and see what we can come up with. So I think in general, people want to know if you recommend even applying at all and going through the process. Is it worth it?
Yeah. Again, we're not attorneys, so not giving legal advice. I would definitely say that's a per business decision. So as you know, PPP is based on the amount of payroll you had over the previous over a quarter, and then showing that you had a substantial drop. So if it applies to you and you are currently have payroll costs, I mean, I wouldn't see why not. You're able to write it off 60% of that and allocate the other 40%. But again, definitely something you would want to look individually with and look at your own tax and legal perspective.
Okay.
And that reduction, and again, you have to show that per quarter you're down at least 25% over prior year is one of the triggers.
Okay. Could you just briefly walk through what the process is?
So one of the problems with the original PPP is they're all tied to banking relationships. So I think this one is definitely geared for those who receive that first PPP. So you go back to that same financial institution that you went to, or I guess if you've established new banking relationships, you can do that. They have a very simple application where you put in, your company information. And again, the trigger is you have to have a reduction of 25% per quarter over prior years. So you show your financials from 2019 for a quarter, you show those same financials for 2020 to establish that. And then you take an average of your payroll costs for that period of 2019, and depending what sector you're in, you either multiply that by 2.5 or 3.5. So basically what you're getting, let me put it simple, right? As a restaurant. So if you lost a lot of business and you can show it, you get 3.5 months of your payroll costs from 2019. If you lost a lot of business and you can show it and you're not in that restaurant group or other group, you get 2.5 months of your average payroll costs from prior year.
Gotcha.
Or now 2019.
Right. How important is it? I mean, you go through, you have a relationship with a lender already. Is it important to have that relationship established already? Or what if you don't have one?
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, with us, we did and we didn't. So it was a relationship, but it had to be a commercial relationship. And I think first round, don't quote me, our bank wasn't really, it didn't roll out too smooth. So it ended up being the bank where I had a previous relationship. So really the relationship was everything, unfortunately. That being said, I think it also highlights, I mean, a lot of our entrepreneurs that we work with, the importance of setting up a banking account, getting an EIN number. That was a huge prerequisite. Yeah, it not necessarily for good locally and for the minority entrepreneurs who historically haven't had those banking relationships.
Right.
But again, I think a lot of people stepped in since then. You had PayPal, you had a lot of non-traditional lenders fill up that space because hell, this is America, right? So they figured out how to make money off of it. So so again, it's really geared towards working with those same lenders that you worked with. At least that's how it's designed.
Right. I see. Gotcha. So this second round is the same idea, that it's meant to be forgiven if you meet all the right criteria. Has anything changed that you're aware of?
Not top of mind. I think it's still 60% payroll, 40% other expenses. So again, it's still based on your average payroll cost. But that's the gist of it. That's been pretty consistent. I think in the beginning, that 60-40 split or something may have been different, but that's the same carryover from PPP 1.
Okay.
And then like a question popped up, but I don't know if I'm supposed to read it or if you have that.
I think that was the question that I just.
Okay.
I have a couple of
questions that read that fast.
Already listed. So, and I don't know if we can answer this one, but another question was, why would a single member LLC with 2019 tax losses not qualify for forgiveness?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Again, not a tax accountant and definitely want to get somebody more qualified than me to answer this. All I could think of is the loss. All I could think of is the entity didn't give themselves a K-1 and didn't claim any income. So again, because 60% of it has to be based on income, the business loss that was shown may not have allocated any money towards, I guess, salary, or there was no K-1 on it. But again, not a tax attorney. I would definitely get a qualified opinion as, again, a kind of an accidental expert, because I was silly enough to be a restaurant owner during COVID. So, but yeah, that's all I can think of, right? Because you don't need a profit so there must not have been income there to forgive. Right.
I mean,
which is important. So as an owner in your business, I think, again, get a more qualified. You can write off up to $100,000 of salary per person, including the ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I didn't go through the process. My husband and I run a business, but we decided not to go through the process. So I can't claim to know much about it at all, other than we looked at it and decided that it wasn't the right thing for us to do. But I mean, it seems like if you're going through a lender or wherever, that, based on, your application, your lender should be able to tell you whether or not you qualify. I mean, right. And I mean,
well, I don't know that they can tell you if you qualify, but they definitely are pretty good at making sure the information is there. And ultimately, it's their responsibility to have the required paperwork and so forth. So yeah, it's again a pretty simplified process that's based on, I think, a lot of learnings from the first one. But going back to the Airbnb, I think that's a good example is the PPP for me. Again, it is geared towards businesses with employees. So this was an employee bill. employment bill. So this is about keeping people working. This is for us, at least restaurant owners, to be able to at least keep, 3, 4, 5 people employed. So this is really geared more towards employees than, I would say, the employee owners or other costs, although you can write off that 40%, which can be significant depending on the amount of your PPP. But yeah, if you don't have employees, to the question before, it's your single entity where, yeah, it's probably not a very lucrative thing for you.
I mean, my assumption is that most people that apply for it are applying for it because they feel like they meet the criteria, they're going to use it in the right way, and then it would be forgiven.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I think it's the ability to retain your employees, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it's so, yeah, if you had a PPP before and you went out of business, yeah, those become now loans that you have to pay back. So again, it is really geared on, you expect to keep X amount of employees, because again, it's based on 3.5 or 2.5 times your average employment, your average salaries that you're paying out. So you're basically, that's what you're doing. The government is basically giving you a 3.5 month bailout of staff, which could be significant for some businesses, and which, honestly, might not mean shit for some others. I mean,
yeah,
I mean much.
So like when you decided to do this, I mean, there's not a guarantee that it's going to be forgiven. You hope it's going to be forgiven. So in your mind, did you go in thinking, okay, if I don't get this forgiven, this is still the right thing for me because this is a loan that I'm going to
I went in thinking I'm a restaurant owner, and it's, if we were closed, it was the government order made it in March. I mean, it was last March. We were shut down. Nobody really knew what was going on. Those who know me knew for damn sure I wasn't about to reopen anytime soon because I'm a germaphobe and had been telling people this was coming. But we won't even talk about that. So for us, it just made sense, right? We were able to, I mean, because the thing that people don't understand with restaurateurs, you still are paying rent. You still are paying a lot of the loans or whatever you had. So those type of things a lot of times didn't stop. So we were able to retain a small skeleton crew. I mean, we're still down significantly in employees. It helped us retain people enough to do curbside. So yeah, and our situation, again, it was a no-brainer, but we also, had upwards of 30 employees, and had significant staffing costs and significant ongoing hire costs that weren't going to stop because of the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is, like, as a business owner, you've got to make decisions. I mean, I think, unfortunately, back in March, especially, I think people were unsure of the program. It seemed like a lifeline. I mean, it is, and it can be a lifeline, but sometimes, you kind of have to weigh that,
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
It's definitely called a loan. It's not a grant.
Right.
So there always is that possibility that, it's not going to work out, that it gets forgiven. And so I think you have to weigh the pros and cons of what would I do if this didn't work out for me? Is it worth taking that money than thinking I got to pay this back at some point?
Yeah, I think whether it's the PPP or the EIDL or any of the packages that came out, again, I would always sit down with an attorney, a tax attorney, or somebody smarter than yourself, and walk through all of those scenarios, because yeah, those are debt, and it shows up as debt on your balance sheet too, right? So, and now again, if you're going to use it and you have some kind of confidence in your individual situation, it could be the best thing since sliced bread. But to your point, yeah, if it was, I guess, a money grab from the beginning, and didn't really align, it's going to show up as a loan. Right. But I will say a loan with a very good interest rate. So again, so wait, yeah, you have to weigh that out too. And yeah.
No, I don't know. Do we have, oh, okay. We do have some more questions, it looks like. So yeah, let's see what they are. Can you see that, Daryl? What was your big hurdle?
My biggest hurdle was banking relationship. Like again, even though 40 was we were doing pretty good, I guess, on paper and so forth. Again, and this is not to the fault of anybody. We were working with a smaller community bank. PPP got rolled out horribly. We weren't connected to any of the banks. And then, like I said, through a huge stretch, we were able to tie a banking relationship. So I think that part, being intimidated of the process, just because of that whole thing and trying to figure out what to do and just not giving up on it, really helped. And then, yeah, but other than that, and then waiting, right? I mean, the first one was in March. Nobody knew what was going on. We just knew we were shut down. So I think the turnaround time, kind of on the first one, but I would say that by far, if PPP and COVID exposed anything, and it was no different in banking, it's that your access to relationships mattered way too damn much.
Absolutely. I mean, think of all the big companies that got PPP loans,
Right.
People that really, really needed it were just shut out.
Right. And again, think of it, that's the design, right? So again, if you have multiple locations with multiple employees, think about that. Now all of a sudden your employees are paid for 3.5 months, and that's huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're a one-off small restaurant or a mom and pop shop, I mean, yeah, the return on it isn't as big as some of these bigger payouts. So definitely we can get into to who PPP was designed for, and and it definitely, I would say, was not the best solution for the small restaurant market, or for the small business market. But again, it was a tool that I definitely, to your point, think that everybody should look at and see if it works in their individual circumstance.
Right. Do we have another question? Oh, what's the turnaround time from application to approval? It's probably better this time around, or it might be, now that the process has been streamlined a little. Do you think?
You see, I'm purposely stalling, like waiting for our private chat, so like somebody gives me the answer.
Hello, back up.
Hey, are people in the back? No, I think like again, ours were.
Well, what was it last time? What was the turnaround last time when you applied versus when you received it?
It was within 30 days. So okay. So again, I think the turnaround time is relatively fast for by any commercial standards. So it was just, again, it was needed so bad back in March. And I think now the applications may have opened last week. I haven't heard of anybody getting funded yet. So I'm assuming kind of the same turnaround time.
Right. And I mean, I'm assuming the process is a little bit more streamlined now. I think it was a frantic, banks didn't know what they were doing per se. It was just sort of a mad rush. And I think this time around, it's a little bit less like that. So
yeah, and they already have a lot of the information in background. So again, it's more of just showing that you had that 25% reduction in sales or loss, and improving your payroll. Yeah.
Well, here's a question I just thought of too. Like if you already applied and you've been through the process, you've got, you're sort of in the system per se, and you're going back for round 2. Does that shorten your process, or do you go through the same process? If you go to the same lender and all that, is it considered a whole new process?
Yeah. So my understanding, again, I'm not a legal expert. It's a whole new loan. It's a whole new process. Again, it is kind of streamlined because you're working with that same lender. And remember, the whole logic before was you already had a lender. The lender was aware of your business and so forth and can vouch for you. and that's how the feds funded it. But that's, was the stupidity in it, right? Because a lot of minority businesses and smaller businesses didn't have those banking relationships and so forth. So now that those are established and all that information is there, the application definitely seemed faster. Now, again, I don't know the turnaround time. Candidly, we submitted ours maybe, I think, last week. I haven't even got actually, yeah. So, and they did their due diligence, and I think we passed more paperwork in this week. So that's about a week. So I don't know the turnaround.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think this time around, some CDFI lenders are also processing loans. I don't think that was true for the first round. I could be wrong, but
yeah, I know. I don't know particular CDFIs. That would be great. I mean, that would be really great. Again, like it, love it. I think a lot of the non-traditional lenders came to the rescue for small businesses that first time around because of the inability of CDFIs and credit unions and so forth to participate.
Yeah. Do we have another question? Javon.
Is there a deadline? I don't know if there's a deadline, but I know it's first come, first serve. So when
I think somebody said March 31st is the deadline. Yeah. So
March 31st.
Yeah. According to the internet. There's also, we're touching on a few questions there. The SBA has a bunch of information on their website. There's a huge document out there on frequently asked questions regarding PPP, so people can go directly there. But then again, if there's questions out there that people have that we're not able to answer, we're certainly happy to collect those and send you to the right person to help answer, whether it's a lender, whether it's a tax attorney, or anybody that can kind of help with these. So I don't know. If you didn't get the first round, where would that have left 40 acres? Oh,
that's a good question. If we didn't get the first round PPP, I mean, we would have definitely been in a horrible position. I would say if we didn't get the EIDL and PPP, yeah, it wouldn't be a 40. So, again, I think the combination of the packages, at least for 40 acres, were like made a huge difference in our ability to stay current on things, keep a skeleton crew, at least offer curbside and so forth. And I would say without PPP and EIDL, you probably wouldn't see about 75% of your favorite restaurants around.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a lifeline, and it's for so many businesses, it is just the thing that's going to keep you going until things start to turn around and become normal again. So my point before of saying you have to evaluate whether it's the right thing, I mean, there is a little bit of that, but it certainly can help sustain for this time period. I mean, restaurants, I guess. Well, let's talk about that. So February 1st or February 2nd, are you guys opening, or?
We're not. So I mean, it's hard for us to run like a 25% model. So we're waiting. Our goal date is March 1st, but again, we're going to play it with science. I think, to your point, I think again, the bailouts were huge for restaurants. I think there's a pent up demand for restaurants. I think it allowed people to really regroup. So I think you'll see some great offerings coming out of the sector. But yeah, for 40, I think our decision is to wait and open up right. 40 acres was an experience. It was real personal. So you can't do 25% of 40 acres.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably pretty hard for most places to operate, at 25% capacity. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't get it. Um, so when do you find out? So, and I don't know, I haven't looked, so I'm sorry, I'm asking a question and I haven't looked for the answer, but if you do get the PPP, when and applications close March 31st, you should have some kind of an answer. When did you know that it would be forgiven? How did you know that, and when did you know that?
We still don't, I guess, technically know. So you turn in your paperwork and so forth, I think by December 31st. So last year we turned in all of the supporting documentation. Again, that documentation requirement is different for some businesses. So we turned in the documentation, and yeah, we don't know. We haven't got it's technically forgiven or X amount is forgiven. So it's just an assumption from the application you filled out.
Did you turn it back into the lender?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So it goes to the lender and then it goes, but then the government, I mean, it's a federal government decision as to whether or not it's forgiven.
I'm not sure who decides.
Okay.
My assumption is, that they turn it in, or that they internally audit it for their records. But yeah, that process is still fluid right now. And I don't think that's because it's problematic, or I just think right now they're just now collecting everybody's paperwork from the last time. Right.
Yeah. I wonder though if that makes a difference for people that are going to apply for round 2, if they don't know, if you don't know if round 1 was forgiven and now you're applying for round 2, my assumption is it would be the same answer for both.
Yeah. I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. In our particular case, it didn't, because again, we have no official notification that our first round of PPP has been forgiven, and we've already applied, and we were never told that would be an obstacle or problematic. So,
okay, yeah, all right, interesting, very interesting. Do we have any more questions? Do you anticipate more relief grants like PPP being made available in the near future? Like a grant, or this is grants or loans? Probably grant programs.
Loans or grants? Who knows? I would hope so in the restaurant sector at least. And I think, I mean, we'd be remiss. We can't really have this conversation when we're talking about how easy money flows and PPPs and 60% forgiveness and these magnificent amount of monies. And at the same time, we argue if people individually should get a $2,000 check, right? So I don't want to be remiss that this should not be like that's crazy. So hopefully, yes, there'll be more relief, and hopefully it'll be on both the social side and the corporate side. And that's not to say that again, the small restaurants, we definitely need help, and on the corporate side, we definitely need help. But we definitely need to hold both of those things in balance, right? We should be investing socially as much as we are in our businesses. So get off my soapbox, and that would be my answer. So hopefully there will be. I have not heard of any particularly.
I haven't heard of anything new just yet, but I also think that I think a lot hinges on what kind of a stimulus package comes out, because I think based on that, there'll be some good stuff coming out of that, or there'll be some limitations, and then I think other people and places will have to step up to the plate. So I think that'll be really interesting. But I mean, nobody's out of the woods. This is
no.
Recovery for businesses is not just going to be done, in the fall, when, this has resonating effects for years and years for businesses. So, yeah.
Well, and it's changed everything, right? I mean, you no longer can be like, what's next? You have to constantly innovate now. And the models that you ran are obsolete. So I think, yeah, like 40 acres, when we reopen, it'll be like a 40 acres 2.0. You can't just reopen and well, I would imagine you can't just reopen and do the same old things you've been doing. Because yeah, post COVID is going to be different. And to your point, I think it'll be spread out over multiple quarters. So.
Yeah. On the juice next week, well, you're going to be on the panel. We're going to do kind of a revisit of the 3 restaurants that I talked to back in April to see, where they are now. What do they anticipate? I mean, by the time we, talk next week, they might be back open in some capacity. I don't know what each one of them is planning on doing, but that'll be interesting to find out. But we are going to talk about like new business models, the shift in consumer behavior. So it's really interesting. I think if we've learned anything, and to me, this goes across all types of businesses. I think in our lifetimes, at least, none of us have seen like such a complete shutdown and devastation of businesses through no fault of anybody's.
Right.
So as an entrepreneur, it's pretty scary to think that something so outside of your control can completely shut down what you built, for so long. And I think moving forward, we need to be aware that, hopefully it doesn't happen again. But if it, what do you do? How resilient can you be?
Right.
That probably should be, sort of at the forefront when you start a business. Like, yeah, I could.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. I think what you'll see, I mean, going on that same vein is, and we've seen this, right? I think that's why you're going to see the most resilient entrepreneurs make it, right? And I think there's certain groups that move like that regardless, right? If you've been a historically marginalized minority, woman, female entrepreneur, I mean, there's some entrepreneurs that have that mindset at all times. And I think those are the ones who have really innovated and really taken their game to the next level. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that panel next week because those are all people who are on to what's next. And like, yeah, and I think it's part of entrepreneurship, right? That's why we're in the game. So, I mean, especially as a restaurateur, if you're crazy enough to be in the restaurant game, like crazy shit happens. I mean, I think we're wired a little differently anyway, but this is entrepreneurship. This is why it's fun. And this is why we talked about this a lot at Start Garden. That's why you have to be willing to fail, right? Because to your point, sometimes in entrepreneurship, a lot of times in entrepreneurship, you're just going to fail and you just got to take the lessons or ideate, innovate, go on to what's next. So, yeah. So that was a great lesson in that because you had no control.
Yeah, none. Yeah. And I do think, I think, and like you said, we see it a lot with people. I mean, sometimes you just, you can, people have great business ideas, but a lot of times people are stuck in their ways. This is my business idea. This is what I'm going to do. And you can always tell those entrepreneurs who are kind of, they're looking around. There's always like the next thing or how can I pivot?
Right.
And I think watching this has taught us the importance of being able to be, sort of that resilient, nimble. How can I navigate through this period? I mean, we've seen, like you said, some really interesting things coming out of businesses that, have changed a little bit of their direction. And it's been great for their business. They might not have done it otherwise. So,
yeah, you definitely should be able to say the answer to what are you doing different because of COVID as a business owner should be pretty lengthy. So,
yeah, everything. I'm doing everything. I'm thinking differently. So anyway, I don't know. Are we anticipating giving out another round of funding like we offered last year to business owners? Start Garden, that is.
Always. So I don't know if it's what's fund you're specifically referring to, but yeah, our goal this year is to raise. Oh, the COVID fund come back?
Yeah, I think that's what they mean.
I don't know that. I don't know that we'll have a specific COVID related fund this year, but we are definitely raising additional dollars to pass directly through entrepreneurs. So with our 5x5 platform, you know, we have the 5x5 All-Star, and that gift is how much, Lori? Is that
I think we decided $20,000
5x5. So which will be, again, all of the past winners. We're coming back with 100 ideas. So that'll be another $300,000 directly into the pockets of entrepreneurs. We're working on a cannabis thing where on 420 have 4 startup cannabis companies pitch for $20,000. So I think, yeah, our philosophy is to get small amounts of capital into entrepreneurs' hands fast, because entrepreneurs know best what to do with it, and fail fast and start again. So
yeah.
And yes, I know that's a long way to say yes.
Yeah, and the Start Garden 100 platform, we definitely are doing that again. There might be a few interesting little changes to it, but nothing, I mean, it's still the same idea. Early stage capital, start with 100, narrow it down. So we're just kind of putting all the last minute details together, but you'll be hearing things soon about what that's going to look like. So I guess we have one more question, and then we probably might wrap up if we don't have anything else. So what is that last question?
What will 40 Acres 2.0 look like? That's next week on the Juice, right? I think, right? Is that next week on the Juice? We're talking about that.
Do you want to make a big announcement then, or do you want to say no?
Yeah, we're talking about that next week on the Juice. So we'll talk about all the stuff 40 has been doing and the stuff we're gonna roll out, and as well as the other great restaurant owners. So
yeah, I think that's what we'll do. Yeah.
So you have to tune in then, Paul Moore.
Yep, tune into the Juice. Cool. All right. Well, I guess if we don't have anything else, we'll wrap up for today. But certainly, if people think of stuff afterwards, just email us and we'll get you some answers. But we just thought we would jump on here and do this today because we got some response from last week's program, and sometimes it's just listening to somebody talk about what it was like to go through the process that is helpful. So thanks, Daryl, for sharing what you did.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right. Peace. Bye.